And a good afternoon. Welcome back to your afternoon 5 State Farm Report. Danielle Drotzman, your host here for 570 WNAX. Thanks for tuning in here today on this Wednesday. Well, we have a special guest joining us here today. I have with me Adam Varenhorst. He is an SDSU Extension field crop entomologist. So, Adam, thank you for joining us here today. And how are you?
Good, and thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're excited to get you on and hear a little bit about what's going on in the world of pests right now as our farmers as we continue throughout the growing season. So, I guess with speaking of that, as we have hit mid-growing season, have farmers been dealing with a lot of insect pressure? Or kind of fill us in there.
Sure, I believe the insect pressure from observations and reports is beginning to pick up, and so we were a little slow at the beginning of the season, and that's pretty typical here in South Dakota. And some of the insects that are being reported the most right now are grasshoppers, which the joke always is that here in South Dakota, that's probably our most abundant insect. And this year is not being any different from the historic reference because we are seeing a lot of grasshoppers. And on the eastern side of the state right now, they're still in the immature stages, and that's a good time to scout and then decide if they need to be managed because it takes less insecticide to manage them when they're small compared to when they're adults.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, do grasshoppers basically affect anything? Corn, beans, weeds, all of that?
Yes, they can affect every crop, and typically during this time of the season, they're still being harbored in the grass, so pastures, range, as well as road ditches. But with the drought conditions that we're seeing in a lot of the areas of South Dakota, we're actually noticing that those grasshoppers are starting to move into crops a little bit sooner than we would normally expect to see them. And as a result, we're starting to see some early signs of defoliation, but nothing too terrible yet. But the recommendation for grasshoppers right now is to go out and scout and estimate a square yard around your feet and count how many grasshoppers are moving. And if you see 15 to 20 of the immature stage grasshoppers moving around in that area, that's the threshold and it's time to spray.
Gotcha. So definitely keep an eye out for those grasshoppers. And I know there's a couple other pests that we're going to maybe visit about here today, revolving around soybeans. So is there currently some soybean pests that are kind of, being watched at the moment that are hurting farmers at the moment?
Sure. Currently, we don't think we have too terrible of populations present, and most of the soybean pests that we see, a lot of times we don't see the negative effects until maybe a week or two down the road from when we first detect the infestations. But the one that we have confirmed here in South Dakota again this year is the soybean gallmage. So infestations have been detected in soybean fields. And the problem with that pest is that we currently don't have great management recommendations for it. It's a very difficult insect to take care of because it flies lay the eggs down towards the base of the plant or any areas that there's injury. So if we had hail or sometimes just driving through the field, we can cause enough injury that the eggs can be laid in those areas. And then the larvae feed under the epidermis, which makes it very difficult to get chemical down to actually reduce the populations. And with the soybean gallmage, one of the big things we'll notice for the infestations is the plants will start to wilt, and after a while, as the infestation grows, the plants a lot of times along the edges of fields will die. And so the heaviest hit areas of the field are typically the field edge, but we've noticed in South Dakota as well as neighboring states that those infestations will move into the center of the field over time. And then the other pest, we've just detected the adults last week as the deck-leaf stem borer, and that's another pest, especially down in the southeast part of South Dakota, we're really keeping an eye on because we've detected large populations for quite a few years now. And some of our research has shown that they can cause variable amounts of yield loss, but the worst we've detected is about 17% yield loss just from the insect feeding. And it's another one of the insects that's quite difficult to manage because the adults are active in the soybean fields right now and will continue until sometime in late July, and eventually we'll start to see those populations decrease. But the larvae are actually present in the center of the soybean stem, and so any insect that gets inside the plant makes it a lot more difficult to manage.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess, you said that it's difficult to manage these, but are there any like recommended management opportunities like to help manage them?
Sure. For the deck-D stem borer, some of the research that we've conducted at South Dakota State University has shown that applying insecticides that are labeled for the pest either during the first to second week of July and then approximately 2 weeks later can have very beneficial responses in terms of knocking down those adult populations and leading to decreased infestations in the field. And we've noticed in those studies that later sprays alone tend to be about as beneficial as having the combination treatment. So we recommend scouting and seeing when you see the activity of the adults, and then that can be used to trigger a spray. Right now, we are recommending either doing the 2 week separated sprays or just using the later July. So when we hit about July 20th to the sometime in the last week is when we would recommend targeting an insecticide application for those fields that have positive identification of Bedectes stem borer adults. And our research from 2024 showed about a 9.6 bushel per acre increase when we use those products during that second to last week of July. So third to fourth week of July, we see some very good yield response. It's a little bit variable because the populations are going to vary from field to field, but for the fields that we tested, we did see that response and it was very consistent. So that's our recommendation. And the South Dakota Pest Management Guide for soybeans has a list of the products that are currently labeled for the deck-D stem borer here in South Dakota. So that's online on the extension website and a great tool for any pest, but weeds, disease, insects, but does have the list of products that we can spray for deck-D stem borer.
There you go. And I guess are these pests something that, might stay in a field year to year? So like say next year when it comes to planting, maybe we can kind of be prepared to, have some of those sprays and management options available.
Sure. The deck-D stem borer will primarily be an issue in soybean in our area of the state. However, they prefer sunflower. So in the central part of the state, they're much more common in the sunflower fields. And historical data has shown that if you put a sunflower field next to a soybean field, that will take care of your population in soybean. And using a trap crop of sunflower, so planting sunflower just around the field edge, can greatly reduce the infestations in soybean. The catch there is that you still have to manage that sunflower, so destroy it once the infestations occur. And I know right now input costs are a major issue, and so that's not going to be a very popular option. But the other thing to do is just monitor, and early harvest can also be a tool for trying to reduce the impact of the deck-D stem borer, because in addition to direct yield loss just from the feeding in the plant, the other thing these larvae do is towards the end of the season when the plant starts to dry down, they will move down towards the base of the plant, and then from the inside of the plant, they will start feeding outwards, and we call that girdling. And essentially, it will be a perfectly cut area on the plant, and if we get any wind or even just natural conditions, sometimes those plants will start to lodge, and that's another place we see a lot of pre-harvest yield loss, because once those soybeans are flat in the field, it makes them a lot harder to harvest.
Absolutely. All right. Well, and with that being said, I mean, if farmers are out scouting and they see something or they might have questions or just need help with some identification, I mean, they can always reach out to you. So, I mean, how can they do that?
Sure. So probably the easiest way during the summer to reach out is to call my office phone number, which is 605-688-6854. I also have my information is up on the extension website for South Dakota State University. And so if you go on to that site and look up my last name, which is Varenhorst, or you can look at the Our People section, and I'm towards the beginning because that goes by first name. So makes it a little easier sometimes to track me down, but I'm always happy to take a look at what's going on with technology these days. A lot of people opt to just send a picture either via email or to my phone of what they're seeing in the field, and that works too. Otherwise, we're always happy to come and take a look at fields that might be having some issues.
Perfect. All right. Did I miss anything, or do you have anything to wrap up with, or a message to leave with the farmers?
I think we covered
Okay,
everything.
perfect. All right. Well, thank you for joining us here today. And you have a great rest of your day. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Perfect. All right. Again, that's Adam Varenhorst. He is an SDSU Extension field crop entomologist joining us here today on your afternoon 5-State Farm Report. So with that, we'll take a quick break. We'll look at some ag weather, and then we'll take a look at your markets here at the bottom of the hour. So stay tuned.